Hello. Today I'm going to talk about attribution lag, what it is, and why it's important. So, basically, what is attribution lag? First of all, attribution lag is simply the delay between you actually making a change in your ad account or just across your funnel. That might be decreasing spend, increasing spend, introducing a new campaign. That moment you do it, and then the time it takes for you to actually see the impact of that change is attribution lag. And this is a really important concept because basically you need to understand that you know it isn't instantaneous. It's not instant, right? When you make a change, you don't see the impact of that immediately, right? And I want to show you a few case studies so that you can actually see what this looks like in practice, and then how to take advantage of it. And yeah, so let me first of all just put myself over here. Cool. So attribution lag is the delay between a marketing touchpoint, like seeing an ad, and a conversion, such as a purchase. So you can actually see this in GA4. Now, whether GA4 is the most effective analytical tool is a separate conversation. Either way, you can find it. And the way you find it is you go to attribution paths under advertising. Then under attribution paths, you can actually see the days to key event or touch points to key event. So this is basically telling us that it takes more or less 11 days for someone to take a key action on a website or on this particular business's website from the first time they interact or see an ad from this business. Or it takes roughly 3 touch points. So them actually, clicking on an ad and interacting with, your ads across different channels around 3 times before they then take action, right, or convert. So this is what attribution lag is. I'm going to show you now what this looks like in real time, and basically what it looks like first. So this is what it looks like, right? And I'll take you through what we're looking at here. Basically, this is actually looking at brand searches versus meta reach and YouTube impressions, right? And what we're trying to see here is at what time does it take for inbound searches for this particular brand name in Google to increase after we increase traffic or brand awareness campaigns across paid social channels. So that's what we're trying to measure here, right? And you can see, right? So reach and impressions on Meta and YouTube, and the kind of green line, aqua line, is brand searches, right? So brand searches was roughly around here, and then as soon as we increased spend on these 2 channels and introduced them to the marketing mix, I should say, we introduced more traffic, brand awareness campaigns into the marketing mix. You see brand searches just skyrocket, right? And what this means is people were seeing ads across YouTube and Facebook, and then days later, roughly 11 days after, they were coming to Google and they're typing in the brand and potentially converting. So one of the key points, though, that I want to highlight here is the point where we actually see brand searches peak compared to the time we actually increased spend or introduced these 2 campaigns, right? So we introduced these 2 campaigns in September. As you can see, spend went through the roof. But we only saw the, I guess, peak of this, the impact in around October. So it took around a month for us to actually see the real material impact that this had on the on the business. And why this is really, really important is because if we start to measure this in terms of dollar amount, you can see, right, July, August, September, and October, right? I also want to add that we're only looking at the region, the United Kingdom region. This business operates in 4 regions, but we're only isolating the UK here to see the impact, right? So this is looking at the UK. So now when we actually zoom in, right, and see what this actually costs in a way, we're only looking at the spend on brand activity, right? We're not looking at spend across paid search, more conversion-based campaigns. We've removed that. We're only looking at brand investment. So brand investment was roughly $467, $587 here. It was less. And then in September we increased it, right? We doubled it. And what this tells us, and you can see in September, right? So September is when we increased. And you can see that brand searches actually stayed pretty much the exact same as August. In fact, they were less than July, right? So if we look at spend and then we just get just so we can kind of quantify this, I'm just looking at all right, spend divided by brand searches, right? Just to get a metric that we can actually use. You can see, right, if we're looking at this metric, September, the cost per brand search increases to $5, right? So at the point when we increase spend in September, it peaks at $213. And the reason why this is really, really important is because if you didn't take into consideration attribution lag, a lot of businesses will panic at this stage and they'll say, oh no, we need to stop because our cost has just inflated, right? The cost for a brand search has doubled month on month. It's not working. Let's stop. This is really, really, this is a terrible return on investment. It's because you need to take an attribution lag. You need to take into account at least 11 days to see the material impact, right? So once we wait around 14 days, 2 weeks to 4 weeks, you then start to see this materialize, and the cost actually drops down to $1.84. Right, so this is why it's super, super important to understand attribution lag. Now, this is looking at, as I said, brand searches. I'm going to now show you what this looks like in terms of looking at conversions. But we're starting at the very top of the funnel. A really good way to measure top of funnel marketing is by seeing how does it actually impact kind of brand uplift. And a good way to measure brand uplift, in my opinion, is by looking at brand searches. So that's just one point. Now, when we scroll down, I want to show you the cost per marketing qualified lead across the entire business or channels. These are all 4 regions, but let's just look at UK because we're looking at the UK here. And you can see in September, when we kind of introduced more channels and more investment at the top of the funnel, i.e., brand campaigns, you can see the impact this has actually had on the entire funnel when we're looking at marketing qualified leads. The cost per marketing qualified lead for the UK has actually dropped to $72, and then in October it dropped to $67. Right, so it has definitely had an impact on the wider funnel. Right, we're looking at all the channels. And this is really important because when we actually zoom in and have a look at, okay, well, what does this look like in terms of absolute numbers? This is looking at now all regions, just to make it a little easier, okay? So spend has stayed relatively the same, right? More or less the same, 18K, 19K. We're actually spending a bit more in June, July, right? But when we look at cost per marketing qualified lead across all regions, we're sitting at around that kind of 55, 61 mark, 58, etc. Above $50. August, it dropped a bit. But as soon as we started introducing more spend on kind of prospecting channels, right, this started to fall, right? And it is still falling. But an important point, and this is kind of now going into another conversation, but I think it's still relevant to attribution lag. It's understanding like spend splits and how you budget and how, channel splits, and understanding how much allocating on prospecting, top of the funnel, more bottom of funnel channels, right? How that actually impacts the entire funnel, right? And you can see here, we went from having kind of a very, very big split on paid search. We're investing a lot on paid search. This is a B2B business, right? And then we went from 75% split to now like around 60-40. So spending more on paid social because we understood, okay, now we're kind of reaching that point of diminishing returns on paid search. We now need to go up the funnel and start to boost brand awareness. And obviously, eventually that kind of materializes across a number of months because if you take into attribution lag, you're essentially building your pipeline through the top of the funnel, eventually come through the bottom. And that's what we understand, right? And that's why we're now seeing this kind of, happen in real time. So that's what that looks like at a very top level. Now, just to show you what this looks like more at a granular level, because I think that just kind of puts the video together. Let me show you kind of what the weekly metrics look like, right? Now, I don't know why you can't see. I mean, this always happens with Loom. But just let's look at this sheet, right? So this is looking at the UK, right? We're only looking at the UK here. And I'm going to show you what happens when we increase spend and how to look at this and take into consideration attribution lag, right? So this is kind of like a mixed modeling report that I use for a number of my clients. This is top line, so spend, all channels, website traffic, MQLs, and then cost per acquisition is cost per MQL. This is the key metric. This is our KPI. This is our source of truth. This is our North Star, essentially. When you come down, then you see kind of the split in terms of paid search, Meta, and YouTube. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to go back and I want to have a look at where we used to be at in terms of cost per acquisitions. So you can see we were at like $200, $280, $234, $108, $199, $116, $171. Well, well above that kind of $150 mark, right? And at this kind of point in time, so let's just look at before July, we're spending, I'd say, most of the budget on paid search. We're spending a little bit on Meta and nothing on YouTube. And when I say we're spending a little bit on Meta, we're spending only on conversion-based campaigns, which is why impressions are very low. Okay, and you can see the CPA and MQL volume was quite mediocre. Fast forward to July, it starts to drop 82, 53, 88, and then it goes back up, and we'll come back to here. But what I want to look at is, all right, well, why did this change, and what are we looking at? We're looking at two things. The first thing we're looking at is actual spend. So obviously, if you go and you decrease your spend by 24%, right, week on week, you haven't factored in attribution lag because it takes 11 days for, 11 days is attribution lag, right? So conversions and MQLs are going to obviously filter through to the next week, right? Because you already have that existing pipeline. And in this case, it happens. So what happens is it makes your cost per acquisition look really good. This is a way you can kind of inflate your numbers. Agencies do it, don't recommend it. But if you kind of have a very significant cut in your cost, the next week you're just going to see amazing efficiency, right? So that's what happens here. We dropped cost, but we dropped cost for a good reason. We dropped cost because we wanted to kind of start figuring out what's happening, cost per acquisitions and how we can start to measure that, right? So we dropped our cost on Google, right? That's how we dropped our cost, 28, 36%. Meta stays the same, okay? Cool. But a very, very important thing happens in July, and that is we start to introduce brand campaigns or traffic campaigns, okay? And this is why impressions start to increase, and this is why CPMs start to decrease, okay? And as we start to get more impressions and more people exposed to the brand at the top funnel, right, that also plays an impact on this number coming down because we're introducing more people. However, you can then see a cost per acquisition increase. Why does cost per acquisition increase? It's simple. It's because we decide to go and increase our paid search spend. And in the week we decide to do that, the next week you see this inflate. And this is what I mean by attribution lag, right? It's not instant. It takes some time for it to then be reflective in your top line metrics, right? It's going to happen instantly. It's going to take whatever your attribution lag is. Now, so in our case, it's around 11 days, right? So we increase it. Nothing happens this month. It slightly increases. And then the next month is when we really start to see the impact. So this increases. That's not good, obviously. And it's because of this. And we know that. That's why I've highlighted it. So when we go down, nothing has changed here. The only thing that's changed is we started to run traffic campaigns. And this is why we're seeing our impressions slightly go up from what it was before. Okay. So now when we go back up and we fast forward to the 11th of August, we cut spend. We cut spend here because we realize, paid search just to reaching this point of diminishing returns, right? So we do that. We cut here, but obviously we have impressions coming through, okay? And what happens is this starts to fall because this has fallen, okay? But now a very, very interesting thing starts to happen. And it's at this point, okay? At this point, we really start to see our cost per MQL drop, and we really start to see our volume increase, right? I mean, look at this. 93, 71, 67, 69, 46, 32, 10, 11, 11, 14, 24, 33. This is a very nice increase. Why? Look at spend. Spend hasn't really changed that much. Changes here, but here it's pretty constant. It's because of this. It's because of impressions. It's because we're introducing our brand to more people at the top of the funnel, i.e., more people at the top of the funnel eventually materializes into conversions. And we really started to do this back in July. And if we take into account the attribution lag of 11 days, 2 weeks to, I'd say, 4 weeks, that's when it starts to materialize, right? Because we're in the funnel, on the top of the funnel, they're going through the consideration phase, the research phase, and eventually they're ready to convert. And that's what's happened here, right? And you really start to see impressions really ramp up. I don't know why, but CPM fell for some reason around this period. Don't know why, but it did. And that really, really benefited us significantly. So then we're like, okay, well, let's start increasing spend. We start to increase spend here. And as normal, as we start to increase spend slightly, this is still holding really strong. And a big reason is because of this, right? We're just, more and more people are coming through the pipeline. Then we start to fast forward and you start to see this. Why? Well, because of this. Same issue. We start to spend more money in paid search. Top line CPA starts to increase. Scroll down. CPMs, for whatever reason, start to rise. And the amount of people coming into the top of the funnel has dropped slightly from what it was before. It's like 154, 143. 154, 77K, etc. Right? And this is starting to increase. And the only thing that really changed is this, right? That's the only thing that's changed. And you can see that this has just started to increase. So the question is well, if we just left this here, because this didn't really change, would this have changed? Probably not. This would probably have stayed similar. Maybe MQL volume would have slightly dropped because impressions have fallen. And for whatever reason, if we go to Meta, this is the campaign, you can see the landing page or cost per landing page view significantly increases around this time. And I think it's Black Friday period, CPMs are just higher. It's 100% why. But this is what attribution lag is. And this is what's understanding kind of, mixed modeling. That's what we call it. But yeah, more so attribution lag. So let me make myself bigger. I don't know why I am blurry. Sorry, guys. Go on. Okay. Well, that's really, really annoying. Can I Okay. I really don't know why it's blurry. I can't get it back. Okay. Anyway, that doesn't matter. The point is I hope that was super interesting, guys, and I will see you in the next video.